very good evening. From stories around the world to stories here at home, this is the National News Broadcast. I'm Vidushni Salish Kumar.
Good evening, I'm Charity Minipurarachi, and now let's move on to the headlines for tonight's news.
The day to hold the general election set to be announced on Monday, Election Commission Chairman says. Two presidential task forces established to ensure a secured country and archaeological heritage management. Prime Minister says that the central bank must bear the responsibility over the decline suffered by financial institutions under its purview. It was revealed at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry that the Shangri-La Hotel bomber Ibrahim and his wife were gripped with extremist ideologies. Protests in US continue to escalate.
On to those and other stories in detail now, and starting off with local stories. Chairman of the Elections Commission's Mahinda Deshapri says that the day to hold the general election will be decided after convening a meeting of the Commission on next Monday. These remarks were made at a media briefing held at the Election Commissions today. The health guidelines to conduct the general election was handed over to the Elections Commission today by Director General of Health Services Dr. Anil Jasinghe. The recommendations provided by the Ministry of Health include on the banner to conduct the postal election, number of state officials to be included for this process, and the banner to conduct the general election. Chairman of the Elections Commission's Mahinda Deshapri said that the Director General of Health Services Dr. Anil Jasinghe handed over the health guidelines relevant to the conduct general election. He said he referred the health guidelines as the green light required to proceed with the electoral process relevant to the general election. He said that a separate discussion will be held with the relevant parties over the relevant received health guidelines. He added that a decision reached after convening a meeting on the Commission on next Monday to announce the date to hold the general election and relevant constitutional announcements related to the election.
සහ දිස්ත්‍රික් මැතිවරණ කාර්යාලවල සේවයෙන් යුතු අපගේ නියෝජ්‍ය සහකාර මැතිවරණ කමසාරිස්වරු අතරත් නැවත සාකච්ඡාවක් කරනවා. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මැතිවරණය පැවැත්වීමේ දිනය සහ ඒට අදාළ ව්‍යවස්ථාවක දැන්වීම නිකුත් කිරීමේ කටයුතු පසු ලබන සතියේ සඳුදා පැවැත්වෙන කමිෂන් රබා රැස්වීමේදී තීරණය කරා.
Director General of Health Services Dr. Anil Jasinghe said that the electoral process has been able to proceed forward with the preventive measures taken against the spread of the COVID-19 in the country by the health authorities. He said that even though preventive measures have been undertaken to control the spread of the disease in the country, a risk continues to persist within the country for a potential spread which is relevant to the rest of the world as well.
රෝගීන් වාර්තා වීම වැළැක්වීම සඳහා තමයි ප්‍රධාන කරුණු කීපයක් මේ පෘථුවියේ ඕනෑම රටක් විසින් ජනතාව සඳහා කටයුතු කිරීමට යොදා තිබෙන්නේ.
For the first time in history, a health staff officer will be assigned for each polling centre during the election. Therefore, all health officials have been requested by the Elections Commission to apply for the post-voting process relevant to the upcoming election. The chairman of the commission said that the deadline to accept the applications for postal votes has been extended to June 8th. The chairman of the Elections Commission requested the candidates and their relevant parties to refrain from holding massive rallies and festivals in regarding to the election. He requested candidates and their relevant parties to refrain from convening and gathering public for various parts of the country for propaganda activities. He said that appropriate distancing measures should be maintained for pocket meetings and related activities. He said that necessary health guidelines to prevent the spread of the disease should be adhered at all times, and he said that all parties should function and operate on the same level without taking any advantages. He said that the electoral process has commenced.
Now, the Presidential Task Force to build a secure country, disciplined, virtuous and a lawful society has been established by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. This Gazette notification for the establishment of the task force under the directive of the President was declared by Secretary to the President, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara. The relevant Gazette notification was issued yesterday. The most prominent responsibility of the government is to give priority to national security and create a virtuous, disciplined and lawful society which respects the rule of law and justice as stated in the policy statement, with stars of prosperity and splendor. The Gazette notification has pointed out that the President has appointed the Presidential Task Force to build a secure country, disciplined, virtuous and lawful society. The President has appointed Secretary to the Ministry of Defence, retired Major General Kamal Gunaratne, as the chairman of the task force, while Senior Assistant Secretary to the Ministry of Defence, D.M.S. Disanayake, as the Secretary of the task force. The task force comprises of Commander of the Sri Lanka Army, Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva, Commander of Sri Lanka Navy, Vice Admiral P.L. De Silva, Commander of Sri Lanka Air Force, Air Marshal Sumangal Dias, Acting Inspector General of Police C.D. Vikramaratne, Director General of Customs, retired Major General Vijitha Ravipriya, Chief of the National Intelligence Service, retired Major General Jagat Alvis, and 6 other high officials of the Tri-Forces and the police. The task force will be assigned to take necessary measures for prevention from drug menace, prevent entry of drugs from abroad through ports and airports, and to fully eradicate drug trafficking in the country and to prevent other social illnesses caused by drug abuse. The task force will also be assigned in taking necessary immediate steps to curb the illegal activities of social groups which are violating the law, which is emerging as harmful to the free and peaceful existence of society at present in some places of the country. The task force will also take necessary measures to take legal action against persons responsible for the illegal and antisocial activities conducting in Sri Lanka while locating in other countries. The Presidential Task Force will also be assigned to investigate and prevent any illegal and antisocial activities in and around prisons. The establishment of the Presidential Task Force for Archaeological Heritage Management in the Eastern Province was proclaimed via a separate Gazette paper. Sri Lanka has entered into both local and international conventions which dictate preserving these heritages, the Gazette notification has stated. Secretary to the Ministry of Defence, retired Major General Kamal Gunaratne, has been appointed as the chairman of the task force. 9 members, including Archaeological Chakravarti Venerable Ellavala Medananda Thera, have been appointed to the task force. The Presidential Task Force for Archaeological Heritage Management in the Eastern Province has been tasked to identify sites with archaeological importance in the Eastern Province. The task force has also been assigned to identify and implement an appropriate program for the management of archaeological heritage by conserving and restoring such identified sites and antiquities. It is also expected to identify the extent of the land that should be allocated for such archaeological sites and take necessary measures to allocate them properly and legally. Also, the task force will be assigned to preserve the cultural value of sites of archaeological importance and promote the uniqueness of Sri Lanka both locally and internationally, and make recommendations for the promotion of such heritages.
And meanwhile, the brother of Fatima Jifri, the wife of Ibrahim Ilham, one of the suicide bombers of Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo, revealed before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on Easter Sunday attack that he had felt several times that his sisters was gripped with extremist ideologies. He said that his sisters and his brother-in-law sternly criticized the Islamic religious ideologies followed by normal Muslims in the country. The brother of Fatima Jifri was summoned before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on Easter Sunday attack to record a statement yesterday. Responding to a query made by the Commission, he said that the marriage between his sister and Ibrahim Ilham was carried out as an arranged marriage on November 4, 2012. The witness said that sister was sent to live with in-laws after in marriage, and Ilham refrained from maintaining close relations with their family following the marriage. He revealed that he noticed certain changes in her sister after the marriage and was seeing her eagerness in various involvements with a firm religious inclination. He also said that his brother, his sister and Ilham refrained from taking part in his marriage on April 23, 2016, citing that participating in a marriage celebration is against her religious beliefs. He said that his sister also rejected to cast her vote, citing once that she should cast her vote only if an Islamic state prevailed in the country. The witness also said that their relations were somewhat detached after an argument occurred between Ilham and his father mid-2018 year due to strong objections accusations levelled by his sister and Ilham against his father's actions for helping out a group of poverty-ridden Sinhalese people. The witness revealed that his sister had informed his father that to refrain from carrying out such acts are sinful according to those religious beliefs. He said that both his sister had made him scold her children without sending him to the regular time schools and has also refrained from giving government-recommended vaccinations citing religious disparities. He also informed the commission that Ilham had not prayed in a religious mosque and always engaged in prayers at home, citing that praying in the mosque is irrelevant to his religious belief. He said that Fatima had telephoned his mother on April 21st last year to lament on her frustrations and have requested the mother to come to her house urgently. He said that his sister and informed the mother following her visit the Ilham had arrived at the house and left at 1 a.m. on the same day. He said that she had requested her mother to take care of children and go into a room on the second floor of the house. The witness said that police officers had arrived at her residence between 10 to 11 a.m. on the same day and the bombs were blasted when the police has requested her to open the door. Subsequently, Sub-Inspector of Homicide Division of the Criminal Investigations Department, Vetha Singha, was summoned before the commission and a series of CCTV videos relevant to the blast occurred at the residence in Mahavila Lane were released to the media for the first time today.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says that the Central Bank of Sri Lanka must bear the responsibility on the decline suffered by financial institutions under the purview of the central bank. The Prime Minister made these remarks at a meeting held at the Temple Trees last evening to discuss on the present situation of the finance company PLC. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said that the responsibilities of the central bank should be altered and improved from the present status. He said that the society will continue to suffer from such slumps if they turn a blind eye on these institutions. The Prime Minister added that subsequently the trust placed on the Central Bank of Sri Lanka by the general public will be fractured, and this could affect the growth of the nation severely. Therefore, he said that measures should be undertaken to bring in new laws to prevent such slumps in future. He said that failing to do so, the trust placed by the nation will be shattered and the economic growth of the country will also result in a slump. Meanwhile, the annual report of People's Bank for the year of 2019 was presented to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today. The report was presented to the Prime Minister by Chairman of People's Bank Sujiva Rajapaksa at the official residence of Prime Minister in Vijayarama. People's Bank Acting General Manager Boniface Silva and Head of Finance Assam Ahmed were present at this occasion.
And in your local update in COVID-19, total number of recoveries from COVID-19 in the country has increased up to 836, with 870 active COVID-19 patients are currently receiving treatments in hospitals thus far. A total of 34 new COVID-19 patients were identified today. According to a report issued by the Epidemiology Unit at 10 a.m. today, 13 COVID-19 patients have been discharged from hospitals after completely recovering from the disease in the past 24 hours. 14 new COVID-19 patients were identified in the country yesterday. 7 of the newly identified COVID-19 patients have reported as Sri Lanka Navy personnel. 3 returnees from Kuwait were also identified as COVID-19 patients, while a close contact of a Sri Lanka Navy personnel was detected as a new patient yesterday. Meanwhile, 2 returnees from Dubai and Russia were also identified as COVID-19 patients. Meanwhile, an island-wide curfew will be imposed from 10 p.m. tonight until 4 a.m. on Saturday, June 6th. Accordingly, from June 6th onwards, the curfew will only be enforced from 10 p.m. to till 4 a.m. in all districts as before.
Well, keeping at least 1 meter apart and wearing face masks and eye protection are the best ways to cut the risk of COVID-19 infection, according to the largest review to date of studies on coronavirus disease transmission.
Researchers have conducted the largest review to date of studies on coronavirus transmission, and they say keeping at least 1 meter apart and wearing face masks and eye protection are the best ways to cut the risk of infection. The review pulled evidence from 172 studies in 16 countries. Researchers found frequent hand washing and good hygiene are also critical, but warned even all those measures combined cannot give full protection. The findings, published in the Lancet Journal on Monday, will help guide governments and health agencies, some of whom have given conflicting advice on measures, but that was largely because of limited information about COVID-19. Current evidence suggests COVID-19 is most commonly spread by droplets, especially when people cough. This infects by entering through the eyes, nose and mouth, either directly or via contaminated surfaces. So researchers on this study became the first to combine information on COVID-19, SARS and MERS, which they say provides the best available evidence to help flatten the curve. While their findings are comprehensive, researchers say they have some limitations for the current pandemic, since most of the evidence came from studies of SARS and MERS. Derek Chu, an assistant professor who co-led the work at a Canadian university, said people should understand that, quote, wearing a mask is not an alternative to physical distancing, eye protection or basic measures such as hand hygiene.
And a novel invention used in Brazilian nursing home in Sao Paulo allows people to safely embrace their loved ones amidst the coronavirus pandemic.
It's been 70 days since 93-year-old Dirce has seen her daughter. Now in a nursing home in Sao Paulo, the pair reunite and are even able to embrace each other thanks to this hugging curtain. The translucent plastic curtain divides the room with one family member on either side. It is fitted with holes carved into plastic sleeves where users can insert their arms and finally hug. The invention was fronted by local businessman Bruno Zani. Ordinarily a party decorator, Zani said he was moved by the hardships of the elderly confined to their nursing homes and he wanted to help. Only one nursing home in Sao Paulo has been fitted with a curtain so far, but he hopes to introduce the idea across the city. Variations of the plastic curtain have been seen in nursing homes around the world, from France to Argentina.
Well, Corona news from South Korea now. An outbreak of COVID-19 at a logistics center operated by one of South Korea's largest online shopping companies has raised concerns over whether the virus can be transmitted by package deliveries.
E-commerce has provided a lifeline to many in lockdown. But a new outbreak in South Korea has deepened anxiety over home delivery, raising the question, can you catch COVID-19 from packaging?
We can contract the virus from surfaces, right? That's really what kind of terrifies me when it comes to these deliveries.
At least 117 infections have been linked to a warehouse near Seoul. It's run by one of South Korea's largest online shopping companies, the e-commerce giant Coupang facility. South Korea's Vice Minister of Health and Welfare, Kim Gan-lip.
We are very nervous about community infections, and we are keeping a close eye on the situation. We are doing our best to prevent the further spread of infection through fast contact tracing and testing.
The virus can persist for up to 24 hours on cardboard and 72 hours on plastic and stainless steel, says research cited by the World Health Organization. Many brands are now able to offer bullet delivery, getting goods from warehouses to homes in less than 24 hours. Both Coupang and Market Kurly provide such services and have reported infections from their logistics centres. However, no cases have actually been linked to deliveries, and health officials have played down the chance of infection, saying there has been no precedent of a global transmission so far from delivered packages. The other thing to consider is the amount of virus that would be transmitted. Ki Moran, a professor of population health at the National Cancer Centre, said it was not so easy to contaminate packaging, as a small quantity of the virus isn't as contagious, and people should be safe as long as they wash their hands.
And meanwhile, the balance of the Tacoma COVID-19 Healthcare and Social Security Fund has now exceeded 1,243 million rupees as several organizations have made their contributions to the fund. Sri Ramco Roofing Lanka Private Company has donated 2 million rupees, while Sri Ramco Lanka Private Company has donated 2 billion rupees, and Science City Cement Lanka Company has donated 5 billion rupees for the Itikama COVID-19 fund. The relevant check for these sums were handed over to the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Presidential Secretariat today. The other donations made to the Itikama COVID-19 included 522,231 rupees by Uma Oya Multipurpose Development Project, 500,000 rupees by Union Chemicals Lanka Company, consultant physician Ms. D.A. Vijay Surendra, 100,000 rupees, and 1 million rupees by director of the Abans PLC company, Rusi Prestonji. In addition, over 1.7 million rupees has been credited to the Itikama COVID-19 websites. Deposits can be made for the Itikama COVID fund through checks, telegraph transfers via www.itikama.lk or by dialing #207#. And meanwhile, Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka has donated a stock of medical equipment to Sri Lanka Navy to use against its battle against the spread of COVID-19. The defence attaché to the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka, Lanka Captain Ashok Rao, donated the Navy a stock of medical equipment to be used in the programs conducted by the Navy for controlling the spread of the coronavirus today. The stock of medical equipment, which include temperature guns and air evacuation pod used to transfer patients safely, were donated to the Commander of the Navy, Vice Admiral P.L. De Silva, by the Indian Defence Attaché Captain Ashok Rao at the Naval Headquarters. Receiving the stock of equipment, Commander of the Navy expressed his gratitude to the Indian Defence Attaché for the donation of a needy hour.
Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has said he does not support deploying the army to end protests over the death of George Floyd and racial injustice. President Trump has threatened to use the military to quell protests across the country. The Insurrection Act dates to the early 1800s and permits the president to send in U.S. forces to suppress a domestic insurrection that has hindered the normal enforcement of U.S. law. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said during a press conference that they supported the rights of U.S. citizens to protest peacefully and does not support the invocation of the Insurrection Act.
Well, good morning, everyone. I've always believed and continue to believe that the National Guard is best suited for performing domestic support to civil authorities in these situations in support of local law enforcement. I say this not only as Secretary of Defense, but also as a former soldier and a former member of the National Guard. The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now. I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act. First, National Guard forces did not fire rubber bullets or tear gas into the crowd, as reported. Second, Guardsmen were instructed to wear helmets and personal protective equipment for their own protection, not to serve as some form of intimidation. Third, military leaders, including the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, were wearing field uniforms because that is the appropriate uniform when working in a command center and meeting with troops in the streets. Fourth, it wasn't until yesterday afternoon that we determined it was a National Guard helicopter that hovered low over a city block in D.C. Within an hour or so of learning of this, I directed the Secretary of the Army to conduct an inquiry to determine what happened and why, and to report back to me. With regard to your first question, as you rightly said, earlier this week I was quoted as saying the best way to get street violence under control was by dominating the battle space. And probably all of you who cover the Pentagon hear us use this phrase often. It's something we use day in and day out. There are other phrases that we use day in, day out that you all understand that most people don't understand. It is part of our military lexicon that I grew up with, and it's what we routinely use to describe a bounded area of operations. It's not a phrase focused on people, and certainly not on our fellow Americans, as some have suggested. In retrospect, I would use different wording so as not to distract from the more important matters at hand or allow some to suggest that we are militarizing the issue.
You did know that you were going to be going to the St. John's Church, but you didn't know what would happen when you got there. And you've since been criticized by many for essentially participating in a presidential photo op. So my question is, do you regret having participated
Well, I did know that we were going to the church. I was not aware of a photo op was happening. Of course, the president drags a large press pool along with him. And look, I do everything I can to try to stay apolitical and to try and stay out of situations that may appear political. And sometimes I'm successful at doing that, and sometimes I'm not as successful. But my aim is to keep the department out of politics, to stay apolitical. And that's what I continue to try and do, as well as my leaders here in the department.
Well, on the same U.S. story, at least 9,300 people have been arrested across the United States amid the ongoing protests over the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man who died last week in police custody in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and police brutality nationwide. Well, now the protesters are demanding all 4 officers involved be charged in Floyd's death. So far, only one white officer, Derek Chauvin, who knelt on Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes as he pleaded, "I can't breathe," has been arrested and charged on Friday with third-degree murder and manslaughter. Medical examiners have ruled the death a homicide. U.S. President Donald Trump has outraged faith leaders and protesters for walking to a historic church near the White House and creating a photo opportunity just minutes after police used chemical smoke canisters and flashbangs on peaceful protesters to clear the way for the rather rare walk. Protesters have remained undeterred by curfews and the presence of the U.S. National Guard in some cities. Largely peaceful protests have turned out violent, with looting and vandalism as the night raged on.
And the U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Aliana B. Teplit, says Americans across the U.S. are expressing their anger over the death of George Floyd and demanding change. Ambassador Teplis tweeted saying the killing of George Floyd is disturbing. She said in a democracy, rule of law must always be upheld and security forces must be accountable for their actions. The ambassador said that the U.S. Justice Department has announced a full criminal investigation into the circumstances of Floyd's death. She has also noted since the end of the U.S. Civil War more than 150 years ago, the U.S. has controlled a legacy of racism. Nonetheless, she said Americans continue despite setbacks to build a more perfect union envisioned by the country's founders and to ensure the law's full protection applies to all. And major broadcasters, celebrities and music streaming companies including Apple Music and Spotify in the USA turned off or made changes to their services yesterday to mark the solidarity with protest against the killing of George Floyd.
Go to the Instagram pages of some of your favorite celebrities and you'll see nothing but a black box where a photo or video should be. Stars from across the media landscape, led by the music industry, joined Tuesday in what is being called Blackout Tuesday in order to protest last week's death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man shown on video being held under the knee of a white police officer for nearly 9 minutes. Pop star Rihanna, in an expletive-laden Instagram post, told her followers not to sell or buy anything. Drake simply used 3 words to express his solidarity along with his screen-filled black image: side by side. Katy Perry also showed her support by adding that she's donating money to several organizations. And the support wasn't just limited to individual musicians. Apple Music's Instagram page went dark with the hashtag "The show must be paused." And Columbia Records said it was going silent and the world should use this time to observe and listen to what's going on. Both, along with Universal Music, pledged to work with communities to fight racial inequality after protests erupted in the United States last week. Streaming giant Spotify said it would feature an 8-minute and 46-second long track of silence. That followed a move taken Monday by Viacom CBS when its channels, including CBS News, MTV, and Black Entertainment Television, transmitted 8 minutes and 46 seconds of breathing sounds with the words, "I can't breathe," to mark Floyd's final moments. Outside of the music industry, Kylie Jenner, actor Bryan Cranston, and actress Olivia Wilde used social media to draw attention to the protests and the boycott.
More stories coming up after this short break.
Welcome back, and we continue with more local stories now. Sri Lanka's fifth executive president and current Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa completes 50 years of political journey. Now let's take a look at a brief report on the services rendered by the Prime Minister towards the nation. The 88 to 90s period was an era in which the country was engulfed with fear and terror. The entire society of the nation was traumatized with the LTTE terrorism and stemmed in north and state-sponsored terrors in the south. Around 60,000 youths faced cruel deaths on the roadsides, while the plight of those who disappeared during the time remains a mystery. Under such circumstances, a leadership was needed to guide the nation amid prevailed social intimidations, and such leadership surfaced with the general public. A new chapter was turned in the street rallies out in the country, with the foot walk commenced from Colombo on March 16, 1992. Political critics have emphasized that this was one of the key moments in history which awakened the opposition and took them on a victorious path at the time. The nation, with much enthusiasm, joined for the 300-kilometer long walk. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa also organized a chain consists of grieving people at the Saman Devalaya in Ratnapura. He was committed in putting an end to the corrupted governance of the time by rallying people against the increasing cost of living in the country. The Prime Minister also made deliberations before the United Nations Human Rights Commission on the tragedies occurred in the country when the law was not initiated in support of the 60,000 youths who lost their lives during the time. He continued to voice out against the injustices occurred in the country before various international organizations. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa regards this struggle as a productive attempt taken to establish a democratic people's government. This resulted with the nation's victory in 1994. As a leader who guided the nation to form a new government, the present Prime Minister had not assumed a key position in the party at the time. As such leader, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was elected as the President of the country in 2005 with the people's mandate.
Sri Lanka Transport Board says that the private buses which have not been deployed for passenger transport services at present will be registered and utilised during RICA occasions. Chairman of the authority, Attorney at Law Kingsley Ranawaka, made these remarks during a media briefing held today. Chairman of Sri Lanka Transport Board, Attorney at Law Kingsley Ranawaka, said that all buses, including the private buses yet to be deployed for passenger transport services, reserved for school transport services, recreational and tourism transport purposes, expected to be registered with the Sri Lanka Transport Board. He said that the ministry has permitted the Transport Board to deploy their buses to provide an adequate number of seats for the increasing number of passengers considering the COVID-19 period. He said that the registration process was commenced today under the Sri Lanka Transport Board. Sri Lanka Transport Board has stated that such bus owners can register for the services through 0771 056 034, 0771 056 038, 0771 056 137 telephone numbers, or email dgmoperation@sltb.lk. Chairman of the Sri Lanka Transport Board, Attorney at Law Kingsley Ranawaka, said that the buses can be used for passenger transport purposes after being registered with the authority. And the largest urban garden in Colombo city under the Saubhagya Home Gardening Program was initiated today. The inauguration ceremony was held at the Sri Lanka Land Development Corporation premises. A 4-acre barren land which cannot be taken for any other purpose will be deployed and utilised for the project. Chairman of the Sri Lanka Lands Development Corporation, Major General W.D.D. Silva, has said that all plans have been made to plant various types of crops and herbs in the garden. The project, initiated under the direct supervision of the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, will be jointly initiated by University of Ruhunu Agrarian Service Development and Western Provincial Agriculture Department.
Now all arrangements have been made to hold this year's National Poson Festival at sacred premises of the historic Mihintalawa Rajamahaviharaya. National Posun Festival will be held on the eve of the Posun Full Moon Poya Day. A special Bodhi Puja to invoke blessings for the whole country will be held at 5 p.m. tomorrow at the sacred premises of the Mihintala Rajamahaviharaya tomorrow. Consequently, Aloka Puja Pinkama at Mihintalawa will be held under the patronage of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa at 6 p.m. Saddharma Varsha Poya Day program conducted by the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation will be conducted at the Mihintalawa Viharaya premises. Necessary arrangements have been made to telecast these programs live on national television. Annual Posun Festival will be held at historic Situl Pawa Rajamaha Viharasthana this time. Chief Prelate of Southern Province and Chief Incumbent of the Viharaya, Venerable Dr. Mettaramba Hemaratana Thera has requested the devotees to engage in religious activities while adhering to health guidelines. The Aloka Puja of Posun Full Moon Poya Day will be held under the patronage of President of the Dayaka Sabha of the Viharaya, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa.
And the chairman of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on Incident of the Political Revenge, Upala Beratna, said that the arrest of the MV Vanguard ship on October 6 in 2015 without adhering to the orders issued by the Defence Secretary is a conspiracy against the state. The chairman of the commission sternly stated that the behavior of the Sri Lanka Navy without adhering to the instructions issued by the Defence Ministry is an insult to the government. Chairman of the Vanguard Maritime Services Private Limited, Nishanka Senadipati, recorded a statement before the commission for the third time today. All documents confirming the weaponry in the ship was belonging to Ratna Lanka Company, the handing over of the weaponry to the Galle Harbour and the instructions issued by the Defence Secretary Karunaratne Hettiarachchi was submitted to the commission. President's Counsel Quer stated before the commission that even though the Defence Secretary has instructed to allocate necessary facilities to hand over the weapons to the Ratna Lanka Security Company after the docks at the Galle Harbour, the Sri Lanka Navy had the ship to its custody in an illegal manner. The President's Counsel has stated that Navy personnel WMP Veera Singha was the officer of had acted in an illegal manner without adhering to the instructions directed by the Defence Secretary. After considering the submissions, member of the Commission Chandra Jayatulaka has stated that Sri Lanka Navy has committed an act of piracy in this regard. Nishanka Senadipati stated before the Commission states that the arrest of the Vanguard ship was carried out under the mediation of ministers of the government.